Chapter 12 Study Time. Leila rolls out of bed. It's late afternoon and she needs to get up. She gazes at her backpack stuffed with books and then trails her eyes to her violin. She most certainly isn't going to get anywhere by staring at the objects. Today she would study. She has to. She needs to pass her classes, and now that she is successfully behind, anxiety has settled in the pit of her stomach. Leila showers and changes into some new clothes. Then, grabbing her backpack, she walks out the door bumping into Haley. The blonde smiles excitedly. Oh, perfect timing. I just got back from the store. Here, she states as she hands over a small bottle of mace. Leila accepts the gift and replies, "Thanks for this. I'll be sure to keep it on hand." Haley holds up a matching bottle with a grin. I figured after the other night it was kinda necessary. Leila nods once and answers with a wave as she continues leaving the dorm. Thanks again. I have to go study. Haley waves as Leila disappears down the hallway and out the doors. Leila sighs once out of sight, feeling somewhat relieved to be alone despite the conversation only lasting a couple of minutes. Leila makes it to the library and stops by the bagel shop, ordering a coffee from the small place before making her way to the elevators. She would study on the 3rd floor today. People hardly made it by the 2nd level, and she wants somewhere quiet. The elevator dings, and the doors release as she gets to the 3rd floor. She hops off, coffee in her left hand. The area is silent. She glances around, searching for signs of other students, but finds it's just herself. She shrugs and goes to one of the empty, glass study rooms, closing the door behind her. She pulls her books out from her backpack and settles them onto the table. Her phone is next and she places it beside the study materials. Taking a sip of her coffee, she muses on how surprisingly refreshed she feels. Glancing at her phone, she unlocks the screen and stares at the camera app. Perhaps the spirit had left her alone for the evening. It's a thought that echoes through her mind. What other reason would there be for her to feel more refreshed than usual? She picks up the phone and clicks on the camera app. Turning it to selfie mode, she snaps an image moments later. Leila checks the image immediately and gasps. Platinum hair and red eyes gaze directly at her from outside the window. She rises from her seat and opens the door, glancing around, searching for any signs of the stranger she met just the other night. Is he stalking her? She goes back to her seat, locking the door behind her and stares at the picture once more. His appearance is completely missing. Her eyes widen. Is her mind playing tricks on her? No, she's certain she saw him in the picture just moments before. Leila shakes her head and sighs. She regrets taking that selfie, but she was curious. She had wanted to know if the orb was gone, and it was. Now though, she has some stranger calling her a weapon following her around, or that's at least what she thinks. She sighs again. This time she opens her microbiology book first and begins reading. After an hour, the words begin to blur together, and her head falls onto the textbook. She just didn't have the capacity to study for long periods. Why did she choose a major that requires sciences? She yawns quietly, covering her mouth to stifle the action out of habit, and finds her phone. She unlocks it and scrolls through her apps. She could always use a distraction. Searching through her current apps, she sighs. There is nothing that she wants to do, and studying certainly isn't a task she's up for in the moment. Leila goes to her backpack and pulls out her laptop, resting it on the table. She digs around the side of the bag for her wireless mouse and powers on the machine. As it loads, she decides she'll play a match or two of a MOBA she enjoys torturing herself with. She logs in and smiles. The game itself is simple enough in theory, but actually winning a match with 4 other teammates she hopes are competent is not easy. She locks in her role and smiles at the enjoyment it brings her. But the torture is coming soon. Leila knows this, but the game is addictive. While she plays, she casts her gaze between deaths at her microbiology book, making slow but steady progress with the materials. Leila just needs a distraction to lessen her boredom with studying. 5 long hours go by before she finally stops her addictive habit. She sighs and begins browsing the internet. Leila quits paying attention to her studying the more she delves into random horror story articles. A shiver runs down her spine at the last story, and an abrupt knock startles her. She looks over to see who had disturbed her, but finds no one there. Leila closes her laptop with a deep frown. Alright, no more horror stories then. The knocking returns though, and she stares at the locked door. In the brief moment between the knock and her looking up, she saw it, platinum hair. He's following her. Leila frowns, gathering her things and leaving the room. It's dark out on the floor, and her nerves begin to fidget around worse than butterflies in her stomach. She almost wants to pass out from nervousness and states quietly to herself, "Just get to the elevator." But her feet wouldn't allow her to move. She curses the heavens and nearly leaps out of her body as a voice states, startling her. You can only move when I will it, Weapon. She blurts angrily. I have a name. He folds his arms over, standing directly in front of her, and counters coldly. I don't care. She scowls at him and snaps. Go away, you creep. He grips her chin, turning her head back and forth, examining her. You are a fine weapon indeed, but it's not yet time for me to take you. The platinum-haired man releases his hold on her, and she's free to move. Before she can do anything, he disappears in front of her and states as a whisper on the wind, I will come for you, Chapter 13 Vampire's Kiss. For the next few weeks, Leila finds herself paranoid. She hasn't seen that man since that night in the library, but she can definitely feel his presence around her. Her exhaustion has been high over the last few weeks, but she also hasn't told Ezra or Haley about the encounter. Every night she dreams of him, and he makes threats to her. Leila sits silently as she eats her sandwich with Ezra across from her, reading a book. He asks calmly, How did you do on the exam? She shoots him a glare and sets her meal down, answering with a sigh at his chuckling. I hope you mean the violin test, because that one I think I did well on. He raises a brow. Oh really? As I recall, you fell asleep during part of it. But I finished on time, Professor. She teases him. He places a finger to her lips and utters, Please, not that title. Leila blushes and retorts, You started it. He doesn't counter her argument and changes the subject, pulling away from her. Have you had trouble sleeping as of late? She frowns and her lips purse. Does she tell him the truth? What if he thinks she's crazy? Then what? Leila sighs, answering honestly, Yes, and there's nothing I can do about it. She notices the frown tugging at Ezra's lips, and he questions calmly, Would you care to elaborate? She hesitates. It's just that. Well, what if you find me crazy? Leila stands from her seat, turning from the man and throwing away her trash. She bites her lip, hesitant to tell Ezra the whole truth. She doesn't want him believing she's lost her marbles. A firm hand grasps her shoulder, spinning her back to face him. He leans in close and replies, lips hovering just above her own. I would never think you're crazy, Leila. Her cheeks turn beet red, and her heart stammers. She can't fight off the butterflies in her stomach and asks hesitantly, You promise? You have my word. He answers smoothly. Leila nods shakily and asks, Can we talk about it in my dorm? He smiles, pulling away. Of course. She takes his hand and gently tugs him along. She's quiet as they walk to the dorm, and once they arrive, she drags the man to her room. Bringing him a chair, she states as she climbs into her bed. I've been having these weird dreams lately. Nightmares, really. He nods his head, placing a finger to his chin in thought. Go on. There's this man. He makes threats to me every night, and I know he means them. He replies curiously. Yet something seems uncertain in your words? She sighs, standing from her spot and pacing the room. I've met this man before. In person. But I don't know. You'll think I'm crazy. Ezra stands, halting her pacing and turning her to face him. Their eyes meet and he replies calmly, I will not judge you. Leila's face reddens and she answers, I don't think this man is human. Inhuman? Can you describe him? She nods her head. Yeah, he has platinum hair and red eyes, and he does some sort of mind thing that makes it so I can't move. I can feel his presence most when I'm alone. Ezra gives her a deep frown. Leila tilts her head to the side and states, waving her hands in the air as if swatting the subject away like a bug. But like I said, it's all dreams and nightmares, right? His voice is dark and he questions, You saw this man in person though? Can you feel him now? She nods her head firmly. Yes. He asks once more, staring unwaveringly into her honey-brown eyes. Do you trust me? Leila answers shyly, Yes, I trust you, Ezra. He places a hand beneath her chin and leans in, capturing her lips in a soft kiss. Leila can feel her body quaking and almost stumbles, but Ezra holds her to him, keeping her up. His cool lips travel to her neck next, and before she can realize what he's doing, he clamps down, biting her without drawing blood. She nearly collapses and is thankful for Ezra's hold on her. A quiet mewl escapes her, and she pleads just above a faint and mindless whisper, Ezra, more. He abruptly pulls away moments later and states with flickering eyes, Don't do that. Don't plead for me. I'm sorry. I didn't notice. She bashfully counters, stepping away from the black-haired man. She stares at his frame. His breaths are ragged, and he diverts his attention away from her, hand covering his eyes. She calls out in confusion, Ezra? He brashly counters. Don't come closer, Leila. Worry consumes her. Had she done something wrong? She reaches a hesitant hand out and states with a tip of her head, trying to meet his eyes, but he refuses the gesture. Ezra, what's wrong? I shouldn't be here, not like this. He lowly growls out. Ezra? The worry in her tone is palpable. He takes one final breath and meets her distressed orbs. His eyes are red rubies. She gasps and asks quietly. What are you? I mean your eyes. He answers with a heavy sigh. I'm a vampire, Leila. Her mind reels to a halt. A what? That's not. You're not. They're just imaginary fictional stories. Ezra runs a hand through his hair, his eyes slowly returning to their amethyst color, and he replies, I assure you they're more than imaginary stories. Shock overwhelms her. Leila doesn't know what else to say or do. New information she wasn't expecting had been thrown at her. She can feel the panic rising in her chest. If what Ezra is saying is true, then it's very possible she could have been dealing with a vampire stalker. What powers did vampires have? How much blood did they drink? How many people have they killed? Has Ezra murdered anyone human? She looks over at the man, whose eyes flicker with a small sense of worry before returning to their calm. I can't go through this. Her eyes roll to the back of her head, and her world becomes dark as she's caught in the arms of Ezra. Chapter 14 Attack. Ezra lifts the woman and places her in bed. She fainted on him, and he can do nothing further about it. He looks over the mark he made across her neck. It would suffice for the time being as a warning to others to stay away from claimed territory. Even Ryu would understand that message. Whether or not he actually pays it any warning is a different matter. Ezra sighs. He had given Leila the mark of the vampire's kiss. If he wants it to do anything useful, though, he requires her blood, but he wouldn't dare ask for that. Now that she knows what he is, he has to wait for her acceptance and hope it doesn't tear her apart inside. He runs a hand through his hair, tracing 2 fingers across the mark. Leila stirs for a moment but soon falls back into her relaxed state. He turns on his heels and notices Haley standing there. Scowling, he asks, How much did you see? You mean before or after you told her you were a vampire? She counters with her hands on her hips. He continues to scowl at the woman and states as he brushes by her frame. Don't let Leila go out alone anymore. She is a very special woman. Do this, and I'll let you keep your memories of this conversation and my identity. Haley questions. And what if she goes out searching for you? I will answer her queries if she still wants to see me, that is. He responds before leaving the room, and no time for other conversation. He hurries across the campus as the sun begins to slowly set over the horizon. He has a concert to tend to, and with one final huff he makes his way to the studio located in the ball hall. Leila stirs and stares at the white ceiling above her. She rolls over to her side and nearly jumps up in surprise at seeing Haley right there. She asks with a hiss, What on earth are you doing here? She slaps a damp rag over the woman's forehead and states, You started running a fever shortly after Ezra left. Leila responds more so to herself, So then it wasn't a dream? Afraid not. I mean, I figured the guy might have been a little bit odd, but I never thought he was a vampire. Leila's eyes widen and she snaps as she practically leaps from bed. Where's Ezra? He can't just go without explaining things to me. Haley grasps her hand and states sullenly, He's probably started his concert by now, and he told me not to let you go anywhere alone. He said you were special. Leila nods and questions skeptically, Why aren't you freaking out? I passed out, but what about you? She sighs and answers, Oh, trust me, I'm internally wigging out. I never meant to set you up with a vampire. Leila giggles lightly for a few seconds before bursting into laughter. Haley laughs alongside her and Leila responds, Really now? That's what you're worried about? Haley giggles. Yes, it seems a little bit silly, but still. Leila smiles at the woman and replies, You're forgiven, and me and Ezra haven't hooked up, just so you know. Haley points to her neck and states, That hickey says otherwise. She blushes and quickly counters, It's not a hickey. Well, I don't know what it is, but he said it was supposed to help ward off other vampires. Haley is quick to point out, So he's basically marked you like a dog? Leila's cheeks redden even more and she counters, No, it's nothing of the sort. She answers in disbelief. She changes the subject and states, Well, if we want to go find Ezra, the best place to search is the ball hall with him having his concert and all. Leila nods her head. I do have lots of questions for him now that I'm not on the brink of passing out in shock though. Beth. She grabs her ID and mace and prepares to walk out when a knock comes to the living room door. The two girls glance at each other and Leila asks, "Are you expecting anyone this late?" Haley shakes her head and Leila feels a chill down her spine. She quickly points to her closet and commands firmly, "Hide and don't ask questions." Without another word, Haley does as told. Leila cracks the door open and recognizes the residential assistant for her floor immediately. She swings the wooden door further and allows the man inside. He states without a care in the world, "You've got a guest waiting outside for you. I think he said his name is Ryu." Leila quickly comments, "I don't know anyone by that name." He snatches her hand and counters, his voice becoming ice cold and familiar to her ears. "Oh, but you do, Weapon. It's time for you to join my side." She watches in awe and horror as he morphs into the platinum-haired man she had seen so many times in her nightmares. He pushes her back until she's pinned to the wall of the living room and utters, "I see that someone has already tried to lay their claim on you." He runs a finger across the mark, ice forming over the appendage as he traces the spot. A scowl forms upon his face. "This belongs to that damned commander." Leila glares at the man before her and snaps, "Let go of me." Before he gets the chance to formulate a response, she swings her arm out and sprays the man in the face with her mace. He growls out, releasing her, and she bolts from the room, heading straight outdoors. She needs to get away from him and to safety, but where would safety be? Ezra. The name leaves her mouth so quickly she almost thought she had imagined saying it. She hears the side door to the dormitory exit open and wastes no time in sprinting towards the ball hall. She has to find the vampire now. Ryu is much too swift for her though and catches her in no time at all, snatching her by the wrist and forcing her to the grassy ground of the amphitheater. There are no students out at this time of night. She screams and shouts obscenities at the man even as he slaps her across the cheek to stifle some of her noisiness. She refuses to throw in the towel. He growls at her and snaps, "Quit your incessant yelling before I drain you of every drop of blood right here, Weapon." She spits angrily, "No, Ez." He grabs her by the throat and begins to strangle her on the ground. She squirms, gasping for air and clawing at his hands. She feels her struggle growing weaker as the seconds tick by. He's going to suffocate her. Black spots fill her vision, and she musters up one last word before losing consciousness. Ezra, Chapter 15, Hole-in-One. His body jolts, the bow of the instrument slamming to a halt among the concert. He receives stares from the audience expecting him to continue playing, but he bows, setting his instrument aside and states loud enough for the crowd to hear throughout the hall, "I apologize, but I have an emergency." Curious chatter floats about the room, but before anyone can ask, Ezra sets his violin and bow on his chair and bolts out of the concert hall, making his way towards Leila's energy. When he arrives, she's fading fast, and Ryu is on top of her, strangling her. Ezra reacts without thinking, his hands immediately flicking towards the man as ice shards sprout from nothing and pierce the vampire in the chest. He had done little to dodge the assault and mocks, "Oh? The commander himself dares to try and take on a true lord." He rushes to Leila's unconscious form and snaps, "You're hardly the true lord, Ryu." This sets the platinum off, and he quips as he lashes a whip fashioned from his blood towards the two, "I see you attempted to mark her. A pity your rules stand in the way of that." Ezra leaps away with her body cradled in his arms and remarks hastily, "That is not the way of the clans. We do not take without permission." He lashes at him again, Ezra jumping away once more and safeguarding Leila. Ryu scoffs, "How long do you think you can dodge my assault, little Ezra?" A flurry of slashes comes his way, but Ezra elegantly maneuvers from each attack, keeping Leila safe. He counters swiftly, "As long as it takes to bore you." Ryu scowls, hurling several blades made of blood at the speedy vampire. "Give me the weapon before I kill you." "No," he answers simply with narrowed eyes. "She is not yours to have." "So be it." Ryu responds coldly before disappearing into thin air. He reappears in front of Ezra and jams a hand through his chest. Ezra grunts at the pain but refuses to release his hold on Leila and states icily, "You will not have her." Ryu rips his hand out of the vampire's chest cavity, blood splashing across his face and the ground before him. He turns on his heels and states over his shoulder coolly, "1 week. I will come for her then, and you will hand her over or you shall die." He vanishes into thin air, and Ezra falls to one knee, still holding Leila close to him. He growls angrily, "No. He can't afford to pass out here. Humans would wake the next day and find his bloodstained body, and that would be a fun time trying to explain that away." "Ezra!" A familiar voice calls out to him, but he cares not for the face as black spots begin to fill his vision. He has to protect Leila. He has to. "Ezra, hang on." I'm taking you and Leila to your place. He replies, collapsing to the ground with Leila's body in his grasp as Haley attempts to help him stay up. No, there is an easier way than by car. Haley stands there with her hands on her hips and replies eagerly, I'm all ears. He gestures to his pants pocket and states, there's a marble. Throw it at the ground, and it'll create a portal to my home. She nods her head rapidly, searching his pockets and finding a black marble with a shimmer to it. She aims it at the ground and watches as it bursts into a swirling blue portal. Ezra watches as her eyes widen in awe, but it's quickly washed away when he stumbles to 2 feet and practically falls through the portal with Leila still in his arms. Haley follows after the duo and helps place Leila onto the couch. As the portal closes behind him, Ezra states, a cold sweat forming across his body. Don't leave her side. Haley questions the vampire. But what about you? He answers weakly before going off to his private bathroom. I'll be fine. Ezra strips his clothes almost immediately and stares in the mirror at the damage done to his chest. A large gaping hole sits beside where his heart is, piercing the top of his left lung. Ryu missed on purpose. That doesn't mean the pain isn't there though. He definitely feels the agony of having his lung torn through. He's certain Ryu took that piece with him as a snack. It wouldn't be uncommon for the sadistic vampire to do. He's just thankful that Leila is safe for now. Ezra runs hot water through the shower and steps in, cleaning the blood and wound from his short-lived battle. He watches as the skin reforms itself rapidly, cells multiplying faster than any living creature could hope to produce with such an injury. After a scrub, he steps out, staring at the pink wound. Once his skin stops regenerating, he places the very same cream he used for Leila's busted lip that night so long ago onto his injury and hisses at the intense burn. He exhales slowly and steps out of the bathroom, Leila standing there wide awake. She had woken not too long after being placed on the couch, and found herself covered in blood. Worry fuels her footsteps as she rises from the sofa, ignoring Haley's pleas for her to rest, and she finds her way to Ezra's bedroom and private bathroom. The door opens and he stands there with a towel wrapped around his waist. Her cheeks redden as she's unsure where to look, so she finds the ground to be her target of interest. You should be resting. She casts her eyes to meet his amethyst ones and quips while gesturing to her shirt. It's hard to sleep with blood all over me. He gives a weak chuckle, grasping at the wound in his chest. Leila frowns and points towards the bed, ordering lightly, you should be the one really resting. Lie down. He counters swiftly, running a hand through those black locks. I need to dress first unless you'd like to stare at me in the nude all night. Leila's face turns cherry red, and she blurts, rotating on her heels to look away from the half-naked man. No, please. She can hear shuffling and drawers opening and closing behind her, but she refuses to look until a firm hand lands on her shoulder and spins her to face the man she had grown worried for. Leila stares at his chest. Scars mar his pale flesh, and she can't help but place a gentle hand on a mark that stretches diagonally from his left nipple to the center of his abdomen. His muscles ripple beneath her touch. Ezra quickly grasps her hand though and states with narrowed eyes, don't do that. Leila flinches at the scolding tone and pulls away. Sorry. Apologies, Leila. Vampires are sensitive to touch and emotions. You shouldn't be in here. It's dangerous. She tilts her head in confusion. Dangerous. He places a hand beneath her chin, tipping her head up to meet her honey brown eyes. He states, yes, you tempt your fate being around me like this. Leila can't help but question, how? You wouldn't hurt me. Not with intent, no. You are difficult to resist. Her eyes widen and she steps away. She fiddles with her thumbs and replies quietly, changing the subject. I need clothes or a clean shirt at the very least. He nods, going to his dresser and pulling out a black button-up. He hands it to her and states, it's not much, but it should keep you covered. Feel free to use the shower downstairs. There are materials ready for your use, and if you want to stay the night, you can use the guest room again. She bobs her head, but before leaving the room, she gently grabs Ezra's hand and pulls him to the bed, making him lie down. You need to rest. He smiles. I will, Leila. She tries to stifle the blush and scurries from the room, going to find Haley, who is fast asleep in the guest room she stayed in last time. It looks like they'll be staying the night. With that in mind, Leila goes to shower first and then finds herself at her own guest room for the night. She curls up in bed, eyes closed as thoughts race through her brain. She would have to get answers when she next. Chapter 16, Broken Trust. The next day, Leila wakes to sunlight beaming into her eyes. She scowls and buries herself further under the blankets, not wanting to get out of bed. A voice states calmly, you have to wake up, Leila. She protests with a small whine and pulling the covers further up. A sigh escapes his body, and she feels the blankets ripped from her frame. Leila casts a glare at Ezra and remarks, "Shouldn't you be in bed?" He responds with a shrug. "I've been functioning on a human schedule for 2 decades now." At the comment, she sits up instantly and asks with suspicion, "What's that mean?" He sits down beside her and replies, ignoring her initial question, "We need to talk." She nods in understanding. "What about?" "It's time you learn what you really are." Leila frowns and questions, "You mean a weapon? Mr. Platinum enjoys calling me that." "So then you know?" She shakes her head. "I mean, not really. I do, but I don't. He just yells at me and calls me a weapon, which I don't get why." "Because of your blood." Confusion settles into her mind and she asks, "My blood? You're not gonna tell me I'm inhuman, are you?" He chuckles weakly and responds, "No, nothing of the sort. You are definitely human, but your blood is special. It acts as a catalyst and provides vampires with a boost of energy. So I'm an extra healthy snack? That doesn't explain why some psycho is after me. There's lots of people to choose from for a hearty snack. Like vegans." Ezra grasps his injury and laughs outright at the woman. She blushes in embarrassment and replies, "Don't laugh at me." He coughs, trying to stifle his laughter, and states, "I apologize, Leila." She pokes him in the shoulder and counters childishly, "If you were sorry, you wouldn't still be laughing." He gives one final cough and replies, going back to his calm demeanor, "Leila, your blood can grant power to vampires." She exhales, "Whoever has me then, has an upper hand if they drink my blood." Ezra nods. She groans and responds, "Why now of all times though? I haven't done anything different in my life." "You've matured." Her lips purse. "I turned 18 2 years ago. Why not show up then?" "Would you have preferred a kidnapping at that time?" he dryly asks. She scowls and counters, "You sure are snarky today." He turns to her and states, "I don't believe you're taking this seriously." Leila can't help but blurt, "What do you want from me? I just found out vampires are real. If you rattle that off to anyone, you're going to look like a crackhead." "Pardon my lack of belief." He responds calmly, "You require proof." She sighs, "I require time. You're saying things to me, and I hear you, but I'm not processing it." Ezra lightly grips her chin between his thumb and index finger, turning her head back and forth, examining the bruises from being strangled and the mark on her neck. Leila asks, "What is it?" "I'm looking over the bruising. Does it hurt?" She shakes her head. "No, does it look that bad? I wasn't really paying attention to it last night in the shower." He traces a finger over the mark, a faint, icy glow shimmering from it the more he rubs it, and he asks, "And this?" She blushes, feeling a stir in her loins, and abruptly stops his ministrations. "Don't do that." He taunts, pressing on the mark once more as his eyes flicker red. "Does it hurt?" She grips the front of his red button-up shirt and breathes out, "No, Ezra." He pushes her down to the bed, his frame above hers. He leans down, lips over the mark, and flicks his tongue across it. Leila squirms beneath him and musters up, "What are you doing, Ezra?" She tilts her head to the side in confusion. His breaths are uneven, like he's been on a strenuous workout. His eyes shine ruby red, but they aren't focused on her. She calls softly, "Ezra." His eyes focus on her own and shift back to amethyst, his lust waning in that instant. He releases her quickly and asks while pulling away, "You're certain it doesn't bother you?" "The hickey?" she asks, and then continues, a blush dusting her cheeks. "Whatever you did, it was enjoyable." He looks away from her and states plainly, "You entice me." "Stop that." Leila huffs, countering, "You're the one who decided to check it. What does that hickey even do anyways?" He frowns. "It's not just a hickey. It's a part to the vampire's kiss." "There's a part two?" Ezra pinches the bridge of his nose and answers with a heavy sigh, "Yes, Leila. In order for it to be complete, it requires drawing blood." She replies with a small yawn, "That means you'd have to bite me, right?" "Yes," he answers grimly. Leila tips her head to the side. She questions him, "What exactly does the kiss do?" "It binds us together. I would be able to feel your emotions and you mine. It's a two-way street. I'd be able to feel if you were in danger more so than now." Suspicion mars her face. She asks, pulling the blankets closer to her, "Have you been watching me?" His eyes darken, and he pushes her back in bed, stating as his lips hover centimeters from her own, "Yes. Then us meeting wasn't a coincidence." "Which time?" he asks. Her mind spirals and tears begin to form in her eyes. She speaks up. Then none of this was real? Ezra's brows furrow in confusion. What? No, Leila, that's not what that means. I trusted you. I thought it was all real. He grips her chin and replies swiftly. Leila, is real. She shakes her head, countering in frustration. No, it's not. How do I know that? You met me on purpose. I thought it was chance. You're a charming guy, and you could easily be manipulating my emotions. He counters. I'm not doing anything of the sort, Leila. I've never used my vampiric abilities to influence your decisions. Prove it then. Bite me. She responds, a single angry tear sliding down her cheek. Chapter 17 Rationale. His amethyst eyes widen and he retorts without hesitation. No, you're mad. I can tell that much. Biting you is not the way to go about it. Well, if you don't, then that monster will. He frowns at her. Don't bring him up right now. She glares at him with angry orbs and snaps. Why not? I'm not wrong. He's probably skulking about here somewhere. He hotly counters. I assure you he's not. Then what's stopping you from biting me? His eyes narrow at the question. I do not bite those unwanting. She challenges. What makes you think I don't want it? The fact that we're having this conversation right now is enough. The mood for love bites has passed. He answers sternly. She scoffs. Have it your way then, but I will get you to bite me before he does. Ezra sighs, presses a soft kiss to her forehead and remarks. It isn't meant to be a challenge, Leila. When I finish that kiss, I will want all of you. I will want to devour you. You can't fight me. She hesitates with her response. Maybe I won't have to? Ezra snorts and replies. Right, because it won't happen. She pushes on his chest, and he grunts at the sudden pain, abruptly pulling away from her. Her eyes widen and she responds apologetically. I'm sorry. I forget you're injured. I'll be fine, he mutters. Leila sits up and leans in close to him. He stares at her with emotionless orbs. She reaches for the top button of his shirt and begins to unbutton it carefully, gazing at angry the wound in his chest. She notices the redness and swelling and asks, You're sure it's not infected? He frowns, answering simply, It's just how the wounds heal. It's worse than it feels. She gently touches the raging flesh and watches as he flinches. Leila frowns and responds, It sure doesn't seem that way, Ezra. Well, generally poking at a hole in someone's chest is going to agitate the person on the receiving end. She blushes and stammers, Sorry. He takes her hand from his chest and asks calmly, Are you done being angry now? Leila frowns, eyes troubled. No, I want to trust you, but until you bite me, I don't know if I can, Ezra. He releases her then and nods. I understand, Leila. She softly asks, Can we go back to the dorm? Of course. She smiles at the vampire and climbs out of bed as he buttons his shirt back up. She can feel his gaze following her about the room as she searches for her shoes and bloodied shirt. Leila turns to him and asks, What is it? He shakes his head, smiling weakly at her. Nothing. She places her hands on her hips and states, I can feel you staring at me, you know. Better me than someone else. After she slips on her shoes, she opens the bedroom door, finding Haley there with a faux surprised expression. She blurts quickly, I wasn't listening or anything. I swear. Leila laughs and replies, We're going home, you nosy cat. She smiles at her and asks, Are we going through the portal because that was cool? Leila tips her head in confusion. Portal? Oh right. You weren't conscious for that. We didn't drive here. Ezra brought us through a portal and that's when we put you on the couch. She explains. Leila just nods her head, looking to Ezra for confirmation. He holds out a black marble and replies, Yes, you'll be going home that way. He throws it to the ground and watches as it swirls to life. Haley instantly jumps through, excited for the short trip, and Ezra holds a hand out for Leila. She hesitates but accepts the gesture and follows through behind him. They're back in their dorm room and nothing looks out of place, for which she is grateful. She questions lightly, How do you know it would bring us here? Ezra points to his head and answers, As long as I've seen the place, I can will it to take me there. She gives a small nod and remains silent for a few moments. Ezra places a hand on her shoulder and states calmly, I should go. You need time to think things over, and my presence will only hinder that. Leila smiles sadly. She wants to disagree, but she can't bring herself to. She knows he's right. She needs to think about the new information thrown at her in a short period of time. Before she can say anything to the vampire, he states, opening the door and leaving, I'll see you in class, Leila. The door shuts and locks with a firm click as he leaves the room, and Leila exhales. Haley places her hands on her hips and asks, wiggling her eyebrows, "What did you guys talk about?" Leila sighs and takes a seat on the small sofa of the tiny living room. She leans back, running a hand through her long locks and finally answers, "I'm a weapon for the vampires." "A weapon?" she questions, confused before sitting down next to her. She ponders out loud. "So are you like some kind of inhuman experiment or something?" Leila laughs and shakes her head. "No, Ezra assured me that I am all human. He says my blood is special. If a vampire drinks it, they get extra beefy. So you're a healthy snack? That's why that creep is after you." She gives a strained laugh and replies, "That's what I said. I feel like it doesn't make sense though. All this effort for me seems wasted. There are probably more important things to focus on." Haley counters, "Like what?" "They're vampires. They probably have forever to worry about other problems, and if you made the list, well, that can't be good, can it?" Leila nods. "That's not all either though. Ezra has been watching me. He didn't say for how long, but he's known about me since we first met." Haley's lips purse and she responds, "So then he's a creep too?" Leila throws her hands in the air, exasperated. "Right? How am I supposed to trust him when he's been watching me? Maybe he's been trying to protect you from that crazy guy? I mean, he did save you yesterday." Haley counters thoughtfully. Leila pulls her knees to her chest, burying her head in them. "If that's the case, then why not just tell me? All I want is honesty." She responds with a groan. Haley leans back and answers, "Maybe he was worried you'd react like you are now, or worse, you wouldn't believe him." She sighs frustrated. "You're right. I wouldn't have believed him, but at least now when it came up, he would have been honest. I just don't know if I can trust him." Haley slides into the floor, lying down, and answers, "Well, why not look at it from a different perspective? You can't change what's already happened, but he's at least not trying to kill you." Leila states dryly, "If he wanted that, he could have done it a dozen times over. I'm even in his violin class and usually the last to leave." Haley grins. "Yeah, but instead he's coming to your rescue. Sounds more like an ally to me." Leila sighs and answers, "I suppose." Chapter 18. At your disposal. Ezra glowers at the mirror, swiping across it and revealing the true Lord once more. "You appear frustrated, Ezra. What's happened?" He snaps bitterly. "I've lost her trust." The vampire lord chuckles, responding in a mock tone. "A woman that's a challenge for you? Surely not." Ezra shoots the man a glare, grabbing the nearest object and throwing it against the wall. A black vase full of lavender shatters. My, he teases, "You really do like her. Could she be the one?" Ezra whips around to the mirror and frowns at the chuckling lord. "No, I really don't think that's the case, and if it was, I've screwed it up. I need you to bring her to me. We can't afford for her to be taken by Ryu. This weapon is different." His eyes narrow at the new information. "Why is she so special?" "Her blood heals, little Ezra." He answers calmly from his throne chair. Ezra scowls at the nickname and gleaned info from his superior. He growls low. "And you waited 20 years to tell me this, why?" He shrugs, standing from his chair, and answers, "Honestly, I thought she'd be here by now. She's matured. Her blood will be exquisite." Ezra questions, "You intend to bite her?" "If she wills it, of course." "And if I decide against it?" "You would deny your true lord blood of the newest weapon, Ezra? There will be more." He challenges lightly. "She is not for sale." The vampire lord chuckles and points at Ezra. "You're smitten with her." His voice drops though and he continues, "Do I need to pull you off this case, Ezra?" He coldly answers with a dark glare, "No. I will have her brought to you within the week, my lord." "Within a week? You expect to earn her trust back so easily?" He counters stiffly, "No, but Rue will return in a week's time. I need her somewhere safe and far from him. Then I will trust this endeavor to you. Call me once you have her." The blonde's image from the mirror fades in seconds, and Ezra exhales, rubbing his forehead in frustration. How could he have been so blind? He's watched the woman since her birth, and yet, he managed to ruin the trust she had in him. He could see it in her eyes when they last spoke. He has to find a way to make up with her, but how? How would he earn back her trust? Did he go through with biting her like she demanded? It would certainly benefit him if her blood really did heal. He could bite her and take care of his slow-healing wound, but did he dare attempt that? Sure, it wasn't a full-blown argument, but she was truly angry with him. He could read that much in her tone and hesitant behavior alone. He sighs, sitting down on his bed, head in his right hand. He has to find a way to make up with her. Leila sighs quietly. Ezra hadn't shown up to microbiology or lunch. It had been 2 days since she last spoke to him. Now she sits in stress management waiting to be picked for kickball in the gymnasium. When's the last time she played that, and how is this activity relaxing? She exhales as she's finally picked for a team. They were first to be in the field. Leila frowns. She hates most sports. This is not what she signed up for. She finds herself a spot in the outer field, hoping to do little work and spend more time thinking. Her lunch was lonely that day. She would normally talk to Ezra and laugh alongside him, but he was nowhere to be seen that morning or afternoon. Perhaps she would get to see him for the violin class. A frown paints her face as a red ball comes flying her way, momentarily pulling her from her thoughts. She catches the thing and holds her hand in the air, allowing the class to see that she had indeed gotten an outage for her team. 2 more to go. The biggest problem she had with Ezra is that he lied to her. He knew who she was from the start and their meeting. She wants to believe it was all real, but part of her struggles to accept that. She wants to believe he means her no harm. After all, he did save her on more than one occasion, but he is a vampire, and that's what she can't get over. His identity is a facade. How can she trust that? She continues to ponder and worry throughout the class, playing kickball on autopilot. Her movements are automatic. Playing childish games is not a thought she wants to spend time on. As class comes to an end, she notices a pale figure waiting by the door for her. Her heart perks up as soon as she recognizes it to be Ezra. He's standing there watching her silently, his jaw clenched the closer she gets. Her steps falter for the briefest moment, but she quickly picks up her pace and greets the man as casually as she can. "How are you?" He doesn't respond and instead simply takes her by the wrist and drags her off to the ball hall. She thinks they're going to his classroom, but they travel down an unfamiliar hall of mostly empty offices. He pulls her into one of the vacant rooms and shuts the door behind him, locking it tight. He gestures to one of the chairs as he releases her and commands lightly, "Sit, please." Leila nods slowly, doing as told, and waits for his explanation. He paces back and forth for several moments, Leila watching with inquisitive eyes. She has no idea why the man wants her now. "I'm supposed to bring you to the underworld to meet my lord." She stares at him for several moments, his pacing never ceasing. "But he wants to taste you." Her cheeks redden and she hotly replies, "Am I supposed to just give him my blood? I'm not doing that." Ezra stops and turns to her, placing a thumb under her chin. "Nor do I want you to." She continues to blush and states, shamefully glancing away from the vampire, "Besides, I said I'd give you a bite, not him. Just you." "I cannot lie and tell you that I don't desire that, Leila." Her heart pounds and she answers sadly, "You can though. You can lie to me." She notices his slow exhalation and he responds, "Leila, I'm sorry, but I've done this for your own good." Spying on me or the keeping the whole vampire secret a thing? Answer me honestly, would you have believed me had I told you outright? She goes silent in an instant. No. She would have thought him crazy and told him to be checked into the local psychiatric hospital. He folds his arms across his chest, taking her silence as his answer. "That's what I thought. Look." He places a pale hand on her shoulder. "In less than a week, Ryu will be back for you. I have very little time to get you somewhere safe, so tell me, what would you like me to do? I am at your disposal." Chapter 19. Bite me. Leila blushes, uncomfortable with the proclamation. She meets his determined gaze and responds, "I don't know. Why less than a week? It's what he promised, and he's likely to keep it for you." She frowns and murmurs dryly, "I feel so honored." Ezra's eyes travel to her neck, the bruising gone. He questions calmly, "You've healed already?" Leila nods. "Yeah, minus your love bite. I've always gotten better pretty quickly." "Your blood heals you." She narrows her eyes and quips, "Yeah, that's generally how platelets and the like work. Last I checked, I'm not a hemophiliac." He sighs, "Your blood heals others as well." Her eyes widen and she blurts curiously, "Does that mean I can fix that hole in your chest in an instant?" Ezra frowns. "Don't worry about that. It will heal with time." "But if I can help?" "No," he answers in a stern tone. Leila pouts for a moment but then replies, "What if we did it without you biting me? Would that make you say yes?" He scowls and asks, "Why are you so determined to do this?" She challenges, "Why are you so determined to say no?" "I asked my question first, Leila. It would be kind of you to answer." Her lips purse together, and the room falls into a tense silence. He stands there waiting for her answer and she just sighs. What is it? She stares at him and answers quietly. I want to trust you, Ezra, but this is difficult. He takes a seat in his office chair and responds, tell me what I must do to earn your trust again. Leila brushes a loose strand of hair behind her ear. She doesn't know what to tell the man. How can he earn back her trust? I don't know, she acknowledges at last. Maybe I just need time. Ezra counters, we don't have time, Leila. She scowls. Right, less than a week. Her face falls in the next moment and she pleads, please, Ezra, bite me before he does. His face softens. You are that worried about him biting you? Of course I'm worried. I don't want some psycho trying to chew on me. He counters smoothly. There won't be much gnawing, Leila. Her eyes widen and she shakes her head. You're not helping. In the next instant he's in front of her, leaning in close to the mark, and he whispers hotly against her nape. You want this? She releases a shaky breath and nods slowly, grasping the front of his light blue shirt. She doesn't give him an answer, and he places his lips on the mark, halting her breaths altogether. He traces the mark with his tongue and speaks up. Breathe, Leila. I haven't done anything. She exhales slowly and counters. You're teasing me. Stop that. Ezra chuckles and nibbles on the shell of her ear, muttering, I haven't done such a thing yet. Yet? Are you going to? She asks hesitantly. Do you want me to? His lips draw back to the mark, and he nips it lightly, earning a surprised squeak from the woman beneath him. She doesn't say anything. He questions once again, his amethyst eyes meeting her hazy ones. Do you want this, Leila? She grips his shirt tighter and replies heatedly. If you ask me that one more time, I'm going to. He swallows her lips in one swift motion, halting her words. He strokes the mark with one hand, eliciting a quiet moan from her. He smirks against her mouth and traces kisses all the way to the love bite. Ezra nips and nibbles on the spot, icy light coming from the bruising flesh. Leila moans softly, but a hand clamps over her mouth, stifling her noises. She glares at the man in front of her, but he merely chuckles at her response before going back to his ministrations on the mark. He's torturing her. She can only grasp tightly at the front of his shirt in this position. He towers over her smaller frame in the chair, and without warning, she cries out as he clamps down on her flesh, piercing into her skin, drawing blood. The pain is electrifying, and tears sting her eyes as his hand keeps a firm place over her mouth, preventing her from screaming out. She feels him suckling on the spot, draining the life from her. She presses against him, but this does little to nothing to remove him from her. She squirms the more he drinks from her and pounds on his chest. He rips away from her and snaps with fierce red orbs glaring at her. Quit that. You're making it hard to finish this. Leila whines. It hurts. Did you think it was going to be pleasant? He questions, giving her an incredulous look. She snaps her mouth shut for a moment before muttering. Then why does it feel good before the big bite? He utters lustfully, pressing a bloodied kiss to her lips. That's called a kink, Leila. Care to explore it further? Her face reddens and she hastily responds, not in this chair, no. He raises a brow and pulls away. He grabs her wrist and drags her to her feet, pinning her to the wall. His leg lands between her thighs, rubbing against her core through her jeans. How about now? He asks, tone low and husk with lust, taunting the woman. A moan escapes her, but he captures her lips in a searing, passionate kiss, hushing her voice once more. She sighs heavily against his mouth, arching into his touch as his hands travel under her shirt and search greedily for their intended target. He pinches the hardened flesh beneath the bra and watches with eyes full of hunger as her body pleads for him. She squirms under him, never feeling this before. She wants more. Ezra, please. He nips at her skin, earning quiet mewls and supplications from her. She grips the front of his shirt, tugging at the buttons, unfastening them and revealing his muscled body to her. Her fingers trace the scars running across his chest, and she earns a hard rub to her core with his knee, eliciting a cry from her. He growls low, pinning her hands above her head and holds her there. He breathes out. No. Confusion crosses her mind for a brief moment, bringing her out of her haze, and she questions, why not? He nips her neck and replies, do you want me to fuck you senseless? Her face lights up cherry red, but before she can respond to the inquiry, he clamps down on the bite wound, fangs elongating and repiercing her flesh as it tries to heal. Tears fill her eyes, but she doesn't fight against him this time. Minutes tick by slowly as he continues to suck from her neck. She can feel a warm buzzing in her chest. Is that the bond he had mentioned? Leila finds herself adjusting to the pain and closes her eye in content. She needs this bond to take effect. It was her one chance at being able to trust Ezra again. He finally rips away from her after several more minutes, eyes shimmering a brilliant red. The lust had died down, and now all that remains is hunger in those orbs as he stares at the mark upon her neck. Leila's eyes open slowly. You're done. He nods. It is Chapter 20 linked. He places a hand to her bosom. You should be able to feel me now. Her chest is warm and she answers with a tilt of her head. I definitely feel something. It's like a mild pressure. Ezra nods once more. It will be that way for now and change depending upon my mood. She squirms out of his hold, placing her hands on her hips as she asks. So then what kind of mood are you in now? His red eyes appear to shimmer and flicker back and forth between the natural amethyst they usually are. But he remains silent, not giving her an answer. She places a hand to her chest and asks warily, You're still hungry? He exhales, checking the wound on her neck before stepping away. He goes to his desk and opens one of the drawers, pulling out another shirt. He tosses it to Leila and replies, Change into that. You've got blood on your top. She gives him a small nod but asks shyly, Where can I change? He begins buttoning up his shirt and answers, turning away from the woman, In here. I won't look if that's what you're worried about. She can feel the truth in her chest, an instinctual feeling rising over the rest. Leila closes her eyes and smiles lightly. Quickly, she changes her top and throws on the button-up from Ezra. Lightly, she traces the wound from the bite and winces. Ezra watches her wince as she continues touching it through the black fabric and murmurs, voice still low, Leave it be. I'm sure it will heal soon. Leila blushes and responds hesitantly, So, what now? He speaks up. You go to your dorm and rest while you can. We don't have much time before Ryu shows up. She questions. You're sure he will come? Definitely. He answers without the slightest bit of hesitance, eyes firm. They're still red as rubies. Leila can't help but to meet his gaze and asks, What about your eyes? Probably one of several side effects from tasting you. Her cheeks redden at the insinuation. Don't say it like that. He chuckles at her disposition and counters. Why? That's exactly what I've done, Leila. Go home. I will feel you from now on. Without another word to the man, she dashes out of his office and heads for her dorm. She makes it to her room in little time, immediately shutting herself in her bedroom. A knock comes to her door moments later, and the handle turns, revealing a confused Haley. She stares at the woman for several minutes and Leila asks frustratingly, What is it? Everything okay in here? Leila sighs, answering, Yeah, things are fine, Haley. Between you and Ezra? She immediately blushes and replies with a small shake of her head. I'm not sure. He bit me today. Her eyes widen and she squeals, sending Leila into a mild panic. She tackles the girl in a hug, squeezing the wound, accidentally causing Leila to hiss at the pain. Haley releases her and states while scratching the back of her head. Sorry. When did he bite you? Leila blushes and answers while staring at her feet. Maybe 10 minutes ago in his office. Haley gasps. You did that in his office? Was it hot? Did it feel good? I must know the details now that my roommate has a vampire boyfriend. Her face continues to darken and she counters. Isn't boyfriend a little bit much? We're not dating. He's a good kisser. I bet he is. Look at him. He's a hottie. Wonder how many women he's had with him. She answers immediately in response. Leila casts a sharp glare towards Haley and remarks, Ezra isn't that kind of man. Haley shrugs with a frown. I don't know. He is cute, and there's no doubt that women and even some men are attracted to him. He has a fan club. Leila rolls her eyes. Boy, did she know about that? Tell me about it. They're like ravenous high school girls. She laughs and states, Well, it could be worse. Leila sits down and responds, I really don't think things can get much worse. Haley settles beside her and asks with a head on her pulled up knee, Why not? You're alive, aren't you? She nods her head. Yeah. But for how long? She doesn't say that part out loud as she wants her roommate to feel safe. Really though, how long does she have before Ryu shows his face? She exhales loudly. Haley tips her head to the side. If I were you, I'd make claims on him before those other girls do. He's a person, not an object, Haley. He can make his own decisions. Besides, we're not dating. She pulls the button up apart just enough to show the injury and continues. Mark is meant to bind me to him in a sense, so dibs have already been laid out. She swoons. That's so romantic, but it looks really painful. Have you actually seen it, girl, because it ain't looking pretty. Haley hands her a compact mirror, opening it and showing her the wound. A bright blue mark is swirling around the bite and reaching down and across her collarbone. Oh my. She presses on one of the puncture wounds and winces as red dots her fingers. He must have bitten her a lot harder than she realized. She strips the shirt off and states, "Guess I'll shower then. That should clear it up, and if it doesn't, well, there are bandages from the first aid kit for it." Well, that's convenient. I want to know the details of that bite though after you shower. Leila gives her a small nod before Haley gets up and leaves the room. Leila grabs a set of clean clothes and then heads off to the shower. The warm water burns the puncture on her shoulder, but she relishes the time to finally be alone. Thoughts run rampant through her mind. Despite the mark on her neck, she didn't know what to do about Ezra. She believed it would be an easy fix once he bit her as requested, but she was wrong. Her mind still swarms with doubt. Can he feel it? She touches the mark once more and notices its coolness in comparison to the rest of her skin. Would it always be so cold? It didn't bother her, but she was curious about it. She lets the warm water run over it once more, cleaning the blood. And what of their relationship now? She's certain the girl didn't mean anything by it, but picturing Ezra as her boyfriend is not something she had imagined until it was brought up by Haley. Her cheeks redden at the thought. She'd never had a partner. Being with someone romantically just wasn't in her path at the time. College comes first. That's what she tells herself, but she doesn't know anymore. Her life is on the line. Who knows when Ryu would really show up? He could come for her early, or he could reveal himself at a later time. She doesn't want to find out regardless. She sighs. It feels as though she's been tossed into a whole new world without any true guidance on how to navigate it. Running a hand through her wet hair, she murmurs, "I'll think about it later." She still has at least 3 days after all. Chapter 21 Hunger. After she had left, Ezra made quick use of a marble to his home. His eyes had refused to return to their natural purple hue, constantly flickering red. He growls low. This did not bode well with him, and he still had to report to his lord. Then there was the addition of his hard-on, he had yet to deal with, as well as his unsatisfied hunger. Leila's quiet whispers and moans had left him wanting more. A lot more than she could willingly offer. Had she been any other woman, he would have had her undressed and bent over his office desk in a heartbeat. He clamps down on his index finger, growling at the situation he's placed himself in. What did he deal with first? Hunger, lust, or his lord? He goes to the bathroom, unbuttoning his shirt and staring in the mirror at the now healed wound in his chest. There was no sign of it having ever existed. In fact, all of his previous scars had mended entirely as well. Their traces of having existed were completely erased. Ezra exhales, running a hand through his black locks. Her blood was like a liquid fire, and he wanted nothing more than to devour all of her as it drained down his throat. It warmed him to no end, a heat he was unfamiliar with, as he was always cooler to touch than a normal being given his ice capabilities. He takes one look down and growls again. Right. He had an erection to deal with as well. This called for physical contact with another, not just a quick handjob he could only hope to work. The urge is strong. He wants nothing more than to bury himself deep within her, but he can't. Ezra takes out another marble and slams it down, walking through the portal with haste. He finds himself in his private chambers of the underworld home he also had. He glares at the guard standing there, who quickly bows an apology. "My lord. I didn't know you'd be. Get me a concubine. A shifter concubine." The guard nods with haste and quickly leaves the room, returning minutes later with a woman dressed in baby blue. He shoves her forward and she stumbles, falling at Ezra's feet. His reddened eyes travel to the woman first, helping her to her feet before he shoots the guard-appointed glare. "Apologies, my lord. I didn't realize you wanted her unharmed." He scowls at the title and orders, "Get out. Woman, you stay." Ezra leads her to his red bed and commands as he places her hands to his temple, "Shift into her." She gives a hesitant nod and does as told. Her frame begins to shift and take on the appearance of Leila. The way she looks in the blue and see-through baby doll top reaching to her waist arouses him. He growls low, biting his finger. The concubine stares at him in distress, and he reaches a hand out towards her. She flinches from his cool touch instinctively, and he frowns. "You've been abused." This is not what he wants. He can't very well screw a frightened woman. He pinches the bridge of his nose in frustration and sits down beside her. She stares at him in confusion. "My lord?" "Ezra. If you're going to use her voice, Then don't call me that. Yais. He orders lightly, say it. Confusion grows in her face and he growls. My name. Say it. Ezra. He hovers over her frame and whispers hotly against the shell of her ear, startling her. Again. She does as told and answers softly, gaining a small sense of confidence. Ezra. This evokes an emotion deep within the vampire, and he fights the urge to take the woman right there. He doesn't want to frighten her. Her cheeks redden just like how Leila's would. He breathes against her neck and asks as he places a gentle kiss on her collarbone. How often do you do this? She answers, You're my first Ezra. His eyes narrow at the woman and she quickly stammers, WW can call for someone more experienced if you'd prefer. She makes the move to call for someone else, but he clamps a hand over her mouth and states, No, you're perfect for this. He nips at her skin and murmurs, If only you were the real deal. She mules quietly beneath his hold, his body pressing against her barely there underwear. His hand travels down, slipping between the fabric, stroking her core, feeling her wetness. He strokes hard, her moans becoming louder. He quickly latches onto her lips and forces her whimpering to quiet down. Stripping off his shirt, he tosses it to the side. The concubine runs her hands over his chest gently, leaving light touches here and there. He growls, murmuring with a low voice, his eyes still deep red with desire. Give me more, woman. She reaches for the belt buckle of his pants, making quick work to remove his clothing. He shreds her underwear and states, This may hurt. Before she can utter a response, he thrusts deep into her core, settling there for just a moment and covering her lips with his own to stifle her futile cries of agony. He would break her in, moving slow at first to allow her to adjust before picking up the pace to his own rhythm. He wanted to be inside of her, though not this look-alike. He wanted to feel her to the brim and make her scream his name in raw ecstasy. Ezra could only dream of that fantasy happening at this rate. It doesn't take long for the woman to reach her orgasm, and Ezra let her sleep afterwards. It was her first time after all, but he was left unsatisfied. He growls impatiently. It's time to finish it off himself. His hand pumps ravenously from base to crown as he draws on images of the woman he desires in his mind. If only he could have her there with him. If only he could taste her then, not just her fiery blood that was like a soothing rush to his chilled body. He lets loose a growl in satisfaction as his seed spills onto the floor. She would be his undoing. He shakes his head, sweat riddling his naked body. Now it was time to deal with his reason for returning to the underworld. There was business to discuss with the true lord, and it couldn't be ignored. Ezra finds more clean apparel and heads to the shower connected to his room, bathing and then dressing in the clothing he had picked out. He glances over at the sleeping concubine who had returned to her natural form and shakes his head, leaving the room immediately. He travels down several dimly lit hallways before coming upon a pair of large double doors. He gives a stern glare to the two guards and states, Leave. I need to speak to the true lord. Yais, Commander. They respond in unison before quickly abandoning their posts. Ezra rolls his eyes and pushes the doors open without so much as a knock. Women surround the vampire lord before him as he drains the blood from one of his concubines. Upon seeing Ezra's arrival, he stands and greets the vampire with firm eyes. You have come here in person, but I don't see the weapon with you. Ezra smoothly counters, not wanting to play this game. She will not be coming now or ever. Oh. He raises a brow, daring the commander to continue. Ezra responds simply, She does not wish to come here, my lord. Nor does she wish to be bitten by you. He frowns, not expecting to hear that answer. You mean to keep me from a delicious meal? You tread a very fine line, Ezra. Was it not you who stated that you would only bite her if she willed it? I've come to give you her answer in that regard. She does not will it. He tries to persuade the blonde. I see you've sampled her though by the looks of your eyes. Ezra openly scowls. She was so afraid of being bitten by Ryu that she asked me to bite her first. This was one of the only ways to earn her trust back, my lord. He flings a hand out, one of the concubines incinerating into dust, her cry going unnoticed by either man. The blonde was furious. Nonsense. The weapon has never declined an offer like this before. This one isn't some mindless toy you can easily manipulate, Mamoru. He states, using his name for the first time in ages. Mamoru points accusingly at Ezra. You've tainted her. Ezra doesn't deny it. He has no reason to. She asked me to. The blonde stares at him flabbergasted before a look of defeat crosses his features, and he questions, eyes flickering with curiosity. Did she taste exquisite? Judging from the look in your eyes, you've had trouble satisfying your urges. He blinks several times, trying to resist strangling the vampire lord before him, and answers honestly. She is divine, like liquid fire. Tell me, how do I deal with this problem, my lord? He smirks. It's easy. Ezra taps his foot impatiently as he waits for the lord to continue. He holds a hand up. You feed on her more. Chapter 22 Kidnapped. Leila paces back and forth throughout the room. It has been days since she last saw Ezra, and no doubt Ryu is bound to show up at any time. Haley watches with frustrated orbs as the woman paces before finally snapping. Girl, you're killing me. Stop it. Leila pauses in her tracks and takes a seat on the bed. She rubs a hand over the icy mark on her shoulder, a chill running down her spine at the sensation. She could definitely still feel Ezra and his emotions, so there was no question that he was alive. But where is he? He should have been there with her. She sighs. She can't very well take up all his time. He was living a double life after all. Perhaps he had several staff meetings. He even canceled his classes for the week. Something important must have happened. Leila remembers Haley's figure standing there and states, "You shouldn't be here, Haley." She glares, placing her hands on her hips and counters. Well, where the hell else am I supposed to go? Leila stares at the ground and replies, "Anywhere is safer than being around me right now." Haley rolls her eyes. Look, vampire or not, some jerkwad isn't going to scare me off. You're my roommate and friend. Leila paces the floor again, muttering, "You may rethink that if you meet him." It all happened so fast. One moment they're talking and laughing together, and the next, the room is flooding with a bright red light, walls destroyed and glass shattering. Furniture is overturned, partially ruined, and the fire alarm is blaring. Leila had fallen to the floor, her back hitting the wall at the blast's impact. Fortunately, she had been facing away from the window when the explosion occurred. Haley wasn't nearly as lucky though. Leila stumbles to her feet covered in dirt, climbing over debris, and makes her way to the fallen girl, stooping down and gently rattling her body. Haley! Haley, wake up! She taps her face several times before earning a groan from the woman. Relief floods her body as Haley jerks up, rubbing her head and asking, "What the fuck was that?" Leila states weakly, "The assault. Ryu must be here." Haley coughs, glancing over at the older roommate, and replies with worry, "You're bleeding." She shakes her head and responds, "I'll be fine. You're the one who's injured. You've got glass sticking out of your chest." Haley grits her teeth and asks, "Think we should pull it out?" Leila gapes at her and counters quickly, "Are you really joking right now?" "It's how I panic." Shaking her head, Leila helps the woman to stand, using each other for support. Leila glances at herself for a moment, feeling a sharp pain shoot up her left arm. She grunts at the agony, causing Haley to give her a worried glance, but she just shakes her head. Where was Ezra? The thought reverberates throughout her mind. She needs him, and certainly he could feel it unless it had a distance for which it could reach. Oh, she's still breathing? My aim must be a little off. Both women drag their attention to the voice, and Leila replies weakly, "I'm not going with you, psycho." He's swift and snatches Haley up by the throat and states as he drags his mouth across her neck, "Oh, you will be going with me, Weapon." Haley squirms and grunts in pain. Ryu smirks at her agony and removes the large glass shard stabbing into her chest. Blood spurts from the wound, and she cries out, coughing up red liquid. Tossing her to the ground, Ryu states, "Now come, Weapon, before I kill your little friend." Leila's eyes widen in fear. She scrambles to Haley's side and can see the life fading from her fast. She glares at Ryu, picking up a piece of glass, slicing across her wrist quickly, gasping at the pain, and remarks, "I'm not leaving her to die." She shoves her arm into the woman's mouth and replies softly, cradling her head in her free arm, "Just drink." Tears form in Haley's eyes as she frowns, coughing at the suddenness of the action, but she does as told. Ryu watches the scene before him with cold, calculative eyes before snatching Leila by her hair and yanking her from the woman. "It won't work, you stupid human girl." He throws a marble to the ground and shoves her through without a second thought, following behind her. Leila rushes towards the dissipating portal, but a hand firmly wraps around her injured arm, a cry escaping her as she's dragged away from her only exit. She hears a growl, but this does little to cease her struggling. She snaps angrily, ignoring her pain, "You're gonna have to try harder if you want to scare me, vamp boy." He yanks her to him, red eyes glaring venomously at her before a hand strikes her across the face hard enough to make her world go black. Ezra can see the smoke billowing from the building and runs for the dormitory. He had been in the underworld for several days taking care of preparations for Leila's arrival. He had to bring her there for her safety, but then he felt it, the panic and pain she was in. He races to the room and notices the large window blown out and a body on the ground. Ezra quickly rushes to the form and finds Haley barely alive, blood coming from a wound in her chest. As he leans down to the woman, he can smell Leila's blood on her mouth. She must have tried to heal her with no result. He scans her body and states as he lifts her head up, she didn't have a vampire to catalyze the effect. I'm sorry, but this will hurt. Haley stares up at him in pained confusion, but he swiftly bends down and bites into her neck. She weakly squirms in his hold. She was much too fatigued to put up any real fight. His fangs bury deeper into her jugular, and she yelps, hand threading through his hair to find some sort of relief. Ezra watches as the wound in her chest begins to heal and close up entirely. He frowns and asks as the color returns to her face. What happened? She snaps with tears in her eyes. What the fuck was that? Where were you? She's gone. That asshole blew up the dorm and took her. Sirens blare and Ezra states somberly, we can't stay here. Haley attempts to stand, and Ezra helps her to her feet, holding her up as she uses him as crutch. She questions with defeat drowning her tone. What are we supposed to do? Ezra pulls out a black marble and replies, flee the scene, climb on my back, and don't let go of me whatever happens. She does as told, holding tight to him as he throws the marble down and swirling blue and white portal opens up before them. He leaps through, and finds himself in his room in the underworld. Haley asks hesitantly as she climbs off his back. Where are we? This is the underworld, a land between the living and the dead. So like a limbo? We going to the vampire headquarters? She presses on in curiosity. Ezra nods his head. We are in them. How come you didn't pick somewhere less dark? It's pitch black in this place. I can't see a thing. How are you walking? He chuckles and responds, vampire, remember? And we're here because it's the first place I thought of. He goes to a torch and lights it up, the room becoming brighter in an instant. Haley stands there puzzled and replies, what do we do now? You wait here. I have to go discuss something with my leader. The only thing she can do is nod as Ezra leaves the room without another thought. He had fires to tend to, and now his charge has been kidnapped. He pinches the bridge of his nose and exhales in frustration. He would kill that vampire.